Presenter and comedian Nina Carolina, better known to the public by her beloved stage name Mpok Alpa, passed away on Friday, August 15th. The news of her death rippled through Indonesia with a heaviness that was both immediate and profound. For many fans, friends, and fellow performers, her passing did not only signify the loss of a talented entertainer, but also the silencing of a voice that had brought laughter, warmth, and relatability to countless lives. What made the news all the more shocking was that very few outside of her closest circle had known the extent of her suffering. Behind the laughter, behind the vibrant energy she brought to the screen, Mpok Alpa had been engaged in a private and painful battle with breast cancer. It was a fight she had chosen to keep hidden, a struggle she endured in silence, masking the physical toll it took on her with wigs, smiles, and excuses that seemed believable enough to prevent questions from becoming too pointed. Even for those who had long worked beside her in studios and stages, the revelation of her illness came like a thunderclap. The decision to keep her illness private was not one born out of shame, but out of a deep sense of care and consideration for others. She did not want sympathy to overshadow her craft, nor did she wish to become a figure defined by pity. For Mpok Alpa, her role in entertainment was not only a job, it was a calling, a duty to spread joy, to lift spirits, and to maintain a sense of normalcy even when her own life had been anything but. She had been diagnosed with breast cancer during her pregnancy with her second child, a time when most expectant mothers are imagining nurseries, preparing for sleepless nights with a newborn, and counting down the days until they can cradle new life in their arms. For her, the news of pregnancy came with another weight entirely, a diagnosis that threatened not only her future but the possibility of seeing her children grow. And yet, she carried herself with the quiet dignity and resilience that had always defined her. Even as treatments drained her body, even as chemotherapy stripped her hair, she insisted on returning to work. She prepared wigs not out of vanity but as part of her armor. To the outside world, she attributed her hair loss to the aftermath of pregnancy, to the hormonal changes that so often accompany childbirth. The explanation was simple, believable, and easy to accept. It was easier for others to nod and move on than to suspect the deeper truth. In this way, she shielded herself from invasive curiosity, but more importantly, she shielded her loved ones from the constant weight of worry. In an interview reported by Dedicom on November 19, 2024, she had explained almost offhandedly that she needed many wigs to prepare for filming after taking a short break for childbirth. Preparing for another shoot? I definitely need to get a lot of wigs because I wear wigs a lot now. My hair fell out badly when I had 2 children, she had said. At the time, few suspected that her words were hiding something darker. They sounded casual, even humorous. People saw only the Mpok Alpa they recognized, quick-witted, candid, and always capable of turning personal struggles into a punchline. Beneath that humor, however, was the reality of a woman preparing herself for the stage even while waging an internal war. When the truth finally surfaced after her passing, many of her colleagues reflected on the signs they had missed, the questions they hadn't asked deeply enough, and the subtle changes that now, in hindsight, seemed so much more telling. Irfan Hakim, her fellow FYP host, recounted through tears how he had once questioned her reliance on wigs. Yesterday, everyone asked why Mpok Alpa kept wearing a wig. She said it fell out after giving birth. But her hair was already bald. Her condition was already weak, he recalled, his voice breaking under the weight of grief. There was an unmistakable pain in his words, not only the sorrow of losing a colleague and friend, but also the regret of realizing how much she had kept hidden from those who cared for her. Melanie Ricardo, another close colleague, had long suspected that something was amiss. The wigs, she admitted, had raised questions in her mind. Alpa never told me she was sick. Then he was getting his hair done and I asked, Alpa, is that a wig or real hair? Then he said it was a wig from Tayrina, Melanie explained. That simple conversation had opened the door to something much more profound. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Mpok Alpa had shared with Melanie the truth about her struggles, the diagnosis that had shadowed her pregnancy, the treatment she had endured, the exhaustion she carried but rarely showed. For Melanie, that conversation now carries the bittersweet weight of finality. We were able to have a heart-to-heart chat, and Alpa finally told us about her struggles from when she was pregnant to how she struggled until she fought against breast cancer, she said at the funeral home in Saganger. It had felt in that moment like a deepening of friendship, an exchange of trust that was precious and rare. She had not known that it would also be their last. I didn't know that it would be my last heart-to-heart talk with him, she confessed, her voice heavy with the realization of how fleeting such moments truly are. The secrecy that Mpok Alpa maintained was not born from pride or denial, but from a desire to protect others from worry, to continue being a source of laughter and light rather than a subject of concern. For those who knew her best, this choice was emblematic of who she had always been, someone who gave more than she took, who poured energy into uplifting others even when her own reserves were running low. In the entertainment world, where vulnerability is often exploited and privacy is rare, her decision to hold her pain close was also an act of courage. She wanted her audience to remember her for the joy she spread, not the illness that dimmed her light. Her passing has sparked conversations not only about the fragility of life, but also about the ways in which public figures often carry invisible burdens. To be in the public eye is to be scrutinized constantly, and for someone like Mpok Alpa, whose career thrived on relatability and humor, admitting to illness might have felt like admitting to weakness. But the truth, as those who loved her can now attest, is that her strength lay precisely in her ability to endure so much while giving so freely to others. In life, she had made a name for herself not by chasing glamour, but by embodying authenticity. Mpok Alpa was a comedian who could make audiences laugh about the everyday struggles of marriage, parenting, and ordinary life. Her humor was rooted in reality, in the small frustrations and absurdities that everyone recognized but few could articulate with the same charm. That was her gift, turning the ordinary into the extraordinary, making people feel seen and creating laughter out of situations that might otherwise feel heavy. And so, when the news of her death broke, the grief was not confined to her family or colleagues. Spread widely, touching audiences who had never met her personally but who felt that they knew her. For them, she had been a companion through television screens, a voice that made long days a little lighter, a presence that reminded them of the power of humor to heal. Social media filled with tributes, not only from celebrities but from ordinary fans who remembered a particular joke, a particular scene, or simply the warmth she radiated. Her family, now left to navigate a world without her, carry the dual weight of personal grief and public mourning. For her children, the loss is particularly poignant. They will grow up knowing that their mother was adored by many, but also feeling the absence of her presence in the most intimate spaces of their lives. For her husband and relatives, the grief is layered with the knowledge of how bravely she fought, how fiercely she tried to preserve normalcy for those around her, even when her own strength was waning. As tributes continue to pour in, one theme remains constant: Mpok Alpa's generosity of spirit. Whether through her humor, her friendships, or her quiet resilience, she gave pieces of herself to others in ways that cannot be measured but will always be remembered. Her death is a reminder of the battles that often go unseen, the struggles people choose to fight silently, and the importance of cherishing those who bring light into our lives.